Now, as far as the topic of today is concerned, please understand that few centuries ago, the meaning of property was limited to immovable property and movable property. Predominantly tangible property. A couple of centuries ago, nobody would have thought that an idea, a concept, or an expression can also be a property. Few would have thought that a thought can be a property. And as tomorrow's lawyer, trust me, the biggest asset which you are going to cultivate is your brain, your mind, your intellect, your capacity to think, your ability to analyze a situation. As a lawyer, that is going to be your biggest asset, a biggest property. Unlike immovable, movable property, which is subject matter of Transfer of Property Act, Sales of Goods Act, and likewise, we call this new concept of property as intellectual property. Now, to understand the background, with the turn of centuries, industrial revolution started. Prior to that also, there were literates who used to produce literature. But that was never considered as a property. If you had heard the name of great literate like Mark Twain of USA, Charles Dickens of Great Britain, Shakespeare, Milton, Keats, Shelley. In our backyard, Kabir Das, Tulsi Das, and the name is infinite. They had created a lot of literature. But what I read, what I heard, that all of them, at least in India, died very poor. Their literature was extremely rich because it transcends centuries and we still follow it. That was easily stolen, copied, used, misused, adapted, translated, but it never was considered a property. So, in the year 1873, in Vienna, an international convention was organized for having an exhibition, of the new inventions of that era. But the Vienna Convention, the Vienna International Exhibition failed totally. those who were invited to participate there refused to demonstrate their inventions, fearing that the moment these inventions are exhibited, demonstrated, they'll be copied. There was no law to protect those inventions. Learning lesson from this failure, the international community organized a convention in Paris in 1883, which was basically a foundation of today's intellectual properties. So Paris Convention of 1883 was for the first time inviting 14 nations which participated, developed a concept. They discussed that something needs to be done to protect these new inventions. And for the first time, this was thought that an idea, a concept, can be a property capable of being stolen, capable of being misused, copied. So, with the success of this Paris Convention, in 1884, an intellectual property organization was formed with these 14 countries who participated. And 3 ideas germinated there, which were the part of this convention. First being inventions, that is now known as patents. Then it was called inventions. The second called trademark. And the third concept was industrial designs. Thereafter, being encouraged with this convention, 2 years later in 1886, another convention was held in Bern for developing the concept of copyright. So the Bern Convention was the birthplace of copyright in 1886, where the copyright was limited at that time to 3 aspects. First category was novels, stories, etc. The second category was songs, operas, music, and the third category for copyright was cultivated as paintings, drawings, sculpture, architecture. So in these 3 categories, it was decided that there shall be a copywriting. Now, it is always said that the best art which is created, the artist takes pain to create the art. He does a lot of hard work to create that art, to look that art so effortless. So it's a paradox. The more you find that an art is an effortless, the more it is hidden with the hard work and the pain taken by the artist. The sculptures which we admire required a lot of hard work, a calculation, and then it looks so beautiful it looks effortless. Now, both these conventions were successful. So, in 1893, in Bern itself, an organization for the protection of intellectual property rights was created. As it was created in Bern, it was named in short form as BIPRI, B-I-P-R-I. Bern Intellectual Property Rights Organization. Now, this BIPRI continued for almost more than half century till 1960, when it shifted from Bern to Geneva. Why it shifted to Geneva? Because after post-World War, Second World War, most of the countries came together to develop an international organization called United States. And there, in the headquarters, there was an agreement, international agreement being entered into all those countries who had participated in the Second World War and learnt a lot of lessons. And that agreement is commonly known as GATT, G-A-T-T, General Agreement of Trades and Tariffs. 1947 gave birth to this agreement, GATT agreement. Now, under GATT agreement in 1970, a new organization born, and BIPRI was converted into WIPO, W-I-P-O. WIPO stands for World Intellectual Property Organization. World Intellectual Property Organization was formed and shifted to the headquarters in 1974. And in 1978 onwards, it became the specialized agency for intellectual properties all across the world. And just to give you a little more historical background, that in the light of GATT, which happened in 1947, India being a signatory there also, a very naive country, recently born, but had an international vision and participated there. And therefore, we also created statutes in India. The first statute for intellectual property was created, a Copyright Act of 1957, then a Trademark Act of 1958, and then the Patents Act of 1970. But these statutes were more in the line of British statutes, as we were ruled by British, so we were more influenced by the British statutes. But in the year 1994, at the end of 94, to be precise, on 30th December 1994, an international conglomerate developed another organization called WTO, World Trade Organization. Now, World Trade Organization had a history from 1986 onwards, that is called the GATT Summit of Uruguay. Uruguay Summit began in 1986 onwards, and in Marrakesh, this developed a new concept called WTO. So WIPO finally entered into an agreement on 1st January 1996 with WTO. So World Intellectual Property Organization entered into a contract with World Trade Organization. Now, India being signatory to WTO as well was also subjected to another agreement, international agreement called TRIPS, Trade Related Intellectual Property Rights.